Okay, so take a close look at this image. It's this incredibly detailed engraving of a deity, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, actually. It looks ancient, right? Sacred? But here's the thing. This exact image was found engraved on a piece of technology from the early 20th century. So the question is, what in the world does a thousand-armed goddess have to do with one of the most famous camera brands on the planet?
Well, to get to the bottom of that, we have to travel back in time to 1930s Japan, because that's where our story really begins, with what felt like an impossible dream. You see, back in the early 20th century, if you wanted the absolute best camera money could buy, you bought German. End of story. Brands like Leica and Contax, they weren't just the market leaders, they were legends. They were seen as the absolute pinnacle of mechanical precision, of optical perfection. They were the gold standard.
And that standard, it came with a pretty staggering price tag. In Japan at the time, a brand new Leica camera would set you back 420 yen. Now I know, that number probably doesn't mean much to us today, but in the context of the 1930s, that was a fortune.
Let me put that into perspective for you. Imagine you just graduated from one of Japan's top universities. You land a prestigious job, say in banking. Your starting salary would be about 70 yen a month. That means a single Leica camera costs 6 full months of salary for one of the country's highest-paid young professionals. It was so out of reach that it led to this beautiful Japanese phrase, takane no hana, a flower on a high peak, something you could admire from way down below, but you could never ever hope to reach. And that frustration, that feeling of seeing this beautiful, perfect piece of technology that was forever out of reach, that's what set the stage for a revolution. And it was a revolution started by one man whose personal anger was about to change the world of photography forever.
So, meet Goro Yoshida. This guy wasn't a CEO. He wasn't some formally trained engineer from a fancy university. He was a hands-on tinkerer, a man who got his start repairing movie projectors. He was also a devout Buddhist and, maybe most importantly, he was fiercely proud of Japanese ingenuity. He wasn't driven by a business plan. He was driven by a powerful personal obsession.
And that obsession really caught fire in Shanghai. He was there looking for spare parts, when an American trader asked him a question that just cut right to the bone. How come Japan could build these massive, world-class battleships, but couldn't make the tiny, precise parts for its own cameras? That question just stuck with Yoshida. It haunted him. So he went back to Tokyo, scraped together that massive sum of 420 yen, and bought a Leica. But he didn't buy it to take pictures. Oh no, he bought it to take it apart. He brought it back to his workshop and, screw by tiny screw, he began to dismantle the whole thing, determined to find the German magic that had to be hidden inside.
And you can just imagine what he thought he was going to find, right? I mean, for that insane price and that legendary reputation, Yoshida half expected to uncover some kind of secret sauce. Maybe tiny little diamonds inside or some exotic metal that nobody else had.
But there was no magic. Inside the world's greatest, most expensive camera, he found nothing more than brass, aluminum, iron, and rubber. These weren't exotic materials from another planet. They were common, they were cheap, and they were all readily available right there in Japan.
And this is really where his mission began. Because that discovery didn't just surprise him, it made him angry. He realized the Leica's incredible value wasn't in its materials, it was in its precision. It was simply incredibly well made. And Goro Yoshida was absolutely convinced that Japan could match that precision. So this anger, it became the fuel for a brand new venture. Yoshida and his partners set out to build a Japanese camera that could go head-to-head with the Germans. But the name they gave their very first creation, well, it revealed a motivation that went way beyond just mechanics. So in 1933, in a little room in Tokyo, Yoshida, along with his brother-in-law Saburo Uchida and a technician named Takeo Maeda, founded the Precision Optical Instruments Laboratory. Their mission was pretty simple: do what everyone said couldn't be done. And believe it or not, by 1934, they had done it. They had created Japan's very first high-end 35mm camera prototype.
So what did he name this groundbreaking creation? Not something technical or boring. Instead, Yoshida reached deep into his Buddhist faith, and he called his camera the Kwanon. It's the Japanese name for the goddess of mercy, whose name means the one who perceives the sounds of the world.
For Yoshida, this was a perfect metaphor. Just like the goddess perceives the world's suffering with infinite mercy, his camera would perceive the world's reality with light. He even named the lens Kasyapa, after a disciple of Buddha who was famous for understanding wisdom through silent observation. So you see, the lens, the disciple,
would gather light, or truth, and deliver it to the camera, the deity. It was a complete philosophical system, a whole theology built right into a machine.
But how does a spiritual vision like that survive in the cold, hard reality of the global market? I mean, a camera named after a goddess is a beautiful idea, but it's not exactly built for business, is it?
Yoshida's business partner, the more pragmatic Sabaru Uchida, he saw the problem right away. The name Kwanon was beautiful, for sure, but it was also a huge marketing hurdle. It was way too religious for a secular product, and critically, it was really hard for potential customers in the West to say or even spell.
And this is what led to the brilliant strategic pivot of 1935. Uchida registered a new trademark, Canon. Phonetically, it sounded almost exactly like Kwanon, so it still had that familiar ring to it. But in terms of meaning, it was a world away. It instantly shifted the brand from something spiritual to something secular, from Japanese to global.
The name Canon was just a stroke of genius. In English, it means a standard of excellence or a guiding principle. It also refers to the authorized books of Scripture, which was a really clever nod to the original holy name. And in music, a canon is a piece built on exact imitation and precision. So you've got authority, precision, and the industry standard, all packed into one simple, powerful, and easy-to-pronounce word.
Okay, so they had a new name, they had a world-class camera body, they were almost ready, but there was one huge piece of the puzzle still missing, which led to one of the most ironic partnerships in the history of business.
The problem was the glass. While Yoshida's team had masterfully reverse-engineered all the mechanics of the camera body, they just didn't have the huge industrial setup needed to manufacture high-quality optical glass for the lenses. And a camera body without an eye, well, it's just a fancy box.
So they went to the only company in Japan that could help them, Nippon Kogaku. At the time, this was the country's top optical manufacturer, the one that supplied all the lenses to the Japanese military. And decades later, Nippon Kogaku would change its name to Nikon. That's right, the very first commercial Canon camera was actually a hybrid, with a body made by Canon and a lens made by its future arch-rival, Nikon. Wild, right?
So let's just trace the final steps of how this tiny lab, born from a mix of anger and faith, became the global giant that we all know today.
The journey was incredibly fast, from the lab's founding in 1933 to that spiritual Kwanon prototype in 1934, and then the game-changing Canon trademark in 1935. The company officially incorporated in 1937, and then by 1947, to really cash in on its growing international fame, it unified its identity, officially becoming the Canon Camera Company.
And in a way, the story really does come full circle. Decades later, in 1988, Canon adopted a new corporate philosophy called Kyosei. It's a Japanese concept that means living and working together for the common good. And it's hard not to see a little echo of the original Kwanon in there, the goddess of mercy who observes the world and works for the good of all.
So the next time you see that name, Canon, you'll know that it's a name rooted in anger, in faith, and in a relentless, obsessive pursuit of precision. It just goes to show you that behind the most familiar logos can lie the most incredible stories, which really makes you wonder, what other everyday brands do you think are hiding a profound origin story right out in the open? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please do me a favor and like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories behind the world we live in.